What would you have done if you were Jack? Sometimes the smallest choices lead to the biggest changes. If this story moved you, let us know where you're watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments below. We love seeing how far kindness can travel. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the so you won't miss tomorrow's episode. A powerful new story that might just change the way you see the world. Because around here, we believe in stories. That means something. See you tomorrow. A mechanic gave up everything for a stranger. Then came the offer of a lifetime. Jack Miller's boots echoed across the polished floors of Terminal B at Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, each step quickened by a clock that seemed to tick louder with every passing minute. He had exactly 26 minutes until boarding closed for Flight 6113 to New York City, a flight he had saved up nearly 4 months' wages to afford. In his backpack, he carried his resume, a crisp navy blue shirt still folded with care, and a letter of recommendation signed by the owner of the small Texas auto shop, where he'd spent the last 12 years fixing busted transmissions and worn-out brakes. This interview, a mid-level technician role at Hudson Motors, was more than just a job offer. For Jack, it was a second chance at stability, at progress, maybe even something close to peace. He moved fast, dodging rolling suitcases and distracted travelers as he made his way toward security, his heartbeat matching the rhythm of the announcements echoing overhead. That's when he saw her. An older woman stood near the TSA checkpoint, surrounded by a mess of overstuffed luggage. 3 different suitcases, one with a broken wheel and a tote bag that looked like it had seen better decades. She was clearly struggling. Her winter coat, a faded green wool number with fraying seams, clung loosely to her shoulders. Her hands trembled slightly as she attempted to lift one of the larger bags onto the screening conveyor. Jack glanced at the digital clock above the security line. 24 minutes. He could still make it. If he didn't stop. People streamed past the woman. A man in a tailored grey suit stepped over her tote without so much as an apology. 2 teens pushing phone chargers on a luggage cart didn't even glance in her direction. She didn't call for help, didn't wave anyone down, just kept quietly struggling with her bags like she had done it 1,000 times before. Jack sighed. Then he stopped walking. "Ma'am?" he said, stepping forward, offering a hand. "Can I help you with that?" The woman looked up, startled at first, then smiled, a kind of smile that held equal parts surprise and deep gratitude. "Oh, thank you, young man. These old things seem to be growing heavier every year," she said with a soft, steady voice. Jack smiled back and lifted her largest suitcase as if it weighed nothing. "You headed somewhere warm, I hope?" he asked. "Just business," she replied vaguely, though truthfully, I forget what that even means at my age. As they moved together through security, slowly, carefully, Jack knew he was risking his flight. He knew exactly how much was on the line. But as the woman, who introduced herself simply as Eleanor, struggled to raise her arms in the scanner, he also knew something else. Sometimes doing the right thing doesn't fit inside a schedule. And sometimes the moments we least expect, the ones that make us late, end up being the ones that change everything. By the time Jack and Eleanor reached her gate, 46B, clear across the airport from his own, his flight to New York had already departed. He knew it before they got there, but he didn't say anything. He just smiled, handed her the last of her bags, and made sure she had everything she needed. "You're in first class," he noted with a raised brow, a little surprised. Eleanor simply smiled, that same quiet smile that made you feel seen, and replied, "Just a small luxury I allow myself these days." Jack nodded, masking the sinking feeling in his gut. He'd gambled big and lost. His job interview, the one he'd been working toward for months, was gone. The ticket was non-refundable, and his phone had died somewhere between security and the coffee kiosk. No way to call the company, no way to explain. He wandered back toward the terminal's quiet edge, found an empty bench near baggage claim, and slumped down, too tired to be angry, too broke to fix it. He closed his eyes, telling himself he'd figure something out tomorrow. Maybe sell some tools, maybe call his old boss, eat some pride, and ask for his job back at the garage. 1 step forward, 2 steps back. The usual. Hours passed. The terminal quieted, the crowd thinning to a low hum. Somewhere behind the glass walls, night had fallen. Jack blinked awake, his neck aching from the awkward bench and the lump of his backpack beneath him. He rubbed his eyes, reached instinctively for his phone. Dead. Still, of course. Then, headlights. A sleek black town car pulled up outside, the terminal doors. At first he didn't notice. Limousines weren't uncommon here, but something about the way the driver moved, precise, purposeful, caught his eye. Then the back door opened, and out stepped a woman in a deep burgundy cashmere wrap. Her silver hair now perfectly styled, a string of pearls around her neck. It was Eleanor. But not the Eleanor he had helped earlier. This version of her stood tall with a kind of quiet command, the frayed coat now replaced with elegance, the tired eyes now sharp and searching. And when she spotted him, still sitting on that same bench, still wearing his stained t-shirt and scuffed boots, she didn't look away. She smiled. She walked straight toward him. "I thought I might find you here," she said simply, as if this moment had always been part of some larger plan. Jack stood awkwardly, blinking like he was waking from a dream. "Miss Eleanor, I thought you'd be halfway across the country by now." "Plans changed," she said, then paused. "I have my own plane, and a little unfinished business." He stared, the weight of the day crashing back over him. "You're not just some lady heading to a business meeting, are you?" "No," she said, her eyes twinkling. "I'm Eleanor. Brooks. I own Brooks Aviation Group, and I think you and I need to talk." Jack followed Eleanor out to the waiting car, still trying to make sense of everything. The driver, James she called him, opened the door with a nod, treating Jack's worn backpack with the same care he might give a diplomat's briefcase. Inside the town car, the seats were warm leather, the windows tinted against the night, and the silence between them was thick with questions. "So, you own an airline?" Jack asked, breaking the quiet as the car pulled away from the terminal. Eleanor smiled, turning slightly toward him. "I founded Brooks Aviation 15 years ago. We started small, regional flights out of Denver. Now, we operate on 5 continents." Jack let out a low whistle, leaning back in his seat. "And this, helping you with your bags, was all some kind of test?" "Not quite," she said. "Every year I travel anonymously, like an average passenger. No staff, no assistants. I want to see how people treat someone they think has nothing to offer them." Jack frowned, uneasy. "So I was part of an experiment?" "You were a surprise," she said gently. "Most people walked by. You didn't. And you gave up something important to help me." He looked down at his hands, still calloused from years in the garage. "Well, that interview was the best shot I had. I don't regret it, but I'm not sure where that leaves me." Eleanor reached into her bag and pulled out a sleek tablet, her fingers tapping quickly. "I have a proposal for you, Jack. Something different." His brow furrowed. "What kind of proposal?" "We're launching a global initiative. Training centers for aircraft technicians in underserved regions, places where aviation is growing, but infrastructure can't keep up. Kenya, Brazil, Indonesia. I need people who can teach, who understand engines from the inside out. But more than that, I need people with character, people I can trust." Jack blinked. "You want me to teach aircraft maintenance?" "You'd be trained. First, of course, 6 months in Seattle with my lead engineers. Then you'd help launch the first training center just outside Nairobi." He sat in stunned silence. Nairobi. Him. Teaching. "I know it's a lot," Eleanor continued. "But I watched how you treated me when you thought I was just some old woman holding up the line. That told me everything I needed to know." Jack's throat felt tight. "I'm just a mechanic from a 2-stoplight town." She looked at him steadily. You're more than that. You just haven't had the right runway yet. The car slowed as it approached a private hangar, where a gleaming white jet sat waiting, stairs already lowered. Jack stared out the window. "This is real?" he asked quietly. Eleanor smiled. "Very. You missed one flight, Jack. But maybe it's because you were meant to be on this one instead." As he stepped into the soft-lit cabin of the jet, still in his worn boots and coffee-stained shirt, Jack had the strange, undeniable sense that his life had just begun to take off. Jack barely slept that night. The private jet had touched down in New York just after midnight. Eleanor's assistant had whisked him away in yet another town car to a quiet hotel near Midtown. The room was nicer than any place he'd ever stayed. Marble countertops, floor-to-ceiling windows, even a robe with his initials embroidered on a tag they somehow had ready. Still, as he sat on the edge of the plush bed, staring at the job offer from Hudson Motors, his heart pounded with indecision. $10,000 a year, health insurance, paid time off, a clean shop, steady hours, no surprises. It was everything he'd been working toward. Safe, solid. But as Jack looked out the window at the glittering city skyline, he couldn't stop thinking about the jet, about Eleanor's offer, about Nairobi. She'd handed him a simple folder before they parted ways, told him to look it over and call her after the interview. Inside were details that made his hands sweat just turning the pages. Full training in Seattle, a relocation package, triple the salary Hudson was offering, and a role that sounded too big for someone like him. Director of Technical Training, East Africa Initiative. Jack kept trying to find the catch. There had to be one. Why would someone like Eleanor Brooks take a risk on a guy like him? A guy with no degree, no experience in aircraft, no passport. But every time he tried to talk himself out of it, he'd hear her voice again. "You just haven't had the right runway yet." Later that morning, he walked into the Hudson Motors office. The interview was brief. They liked him, more than liked him. They upped their offer by 10 grand on the spot. Said they could start him in 2 weeks. Handshake, HR paperwork, congratulations. They expected him to say yes, but Jack asked for 24 hours. Back in his hotel room, he stared at both offers side by side. One was everything he thought he'd ever wanted. The other was a future he hadn't dared imagine. Then right at 7 p.m., the phone on the nightstand rang. Not his cell phone. The hotel line. "This is Jack," he said, unsure. "Mr. Miller," the concierge replied smoothly. "Your car is waiting." Confused, Jack headed downstairs. The same black town car from the airport was idling by the curb. The driver opened the door without a word. Inside, Eleanor was waiting, dressed in a tailored navy suit, tablet in hand. "Evening," she said with a nod. "I thought we should talk before you decide." They dined in a private room atop a skyscraper, the entire city of New York sprawling below, and as Eleanor rolled out the vision, not just for Nairobi, but for Brazil, Indonesia, Vietnam, Jack felt his pulse quicken. This wasn't a job offer. This was a mission. "You can go back to fixing cars," she said softly. "You'll be good at it. Or you can build something bigger than yourself." Jack looked out over the lights and realized he already knew the answer. 18 months later, Jack Miller stood at the edge of the observation deck of the Brooks Aviation Training Center just outside Nairobi, Kenya. The morning sun spilled over the tarmac, casting golden light across 3 parked aircraft waiting for maintenance. Below him, through the massive windows, he could see his team. 32 local trainees, now full-fledged technicians, moving with purpose and precision. Tools in hand, radios clipped to their uniforms, they worked confidently, like they'd been born for this. Jack placed both hands on the railing, took a slow breath, and smiled. He still couldn't quite believe it. The grease under his fingernails was different now. Aviation grade, not engine oil. The rhythms of this place, aircraft cycles, turbine diagnostics, fuel flow calibration. were no longer foreign to him. He had learned, adapted, and grown. But more than that, he had taught. And that had changed him. A voice beside him broke the silence. "Impressive operation you've built here, Mr. Miller." Jack turned to see Daniel Omondi, Kenya's Minister of Transport, dressed sharp in a tailored navy suit. Jack offered a firm handshake. "Thank you, sir. I just helped build the team. They're the real engine behind this place." Daniel chuckled. "Modest. Eleanor said you'd be like that." As if summoned by her name, the sound of an arriving vehicle turned both their heads. A familiar black town car pulled up outside the entrance. The door opened, and Eleanor Brooks stepped out, elegant as always in a linen suit and wide-brimmed hat, a concession to the East African sun. At 73, she walked slower now, but her presence still carried weight. She nodded to the minister, then made her way toward Jack with a smile that hadn't changed at all. "You clean up well," she said, eyes sparkling. Jack chuckled. "Still getting used to being called sir by guys twice my size." She handed him a small box. No fanfare. Inside was a silver keychain, a miniature suitcase. He laughed softly, instantly reminded of the moment they first met. "Thought you'd appreciate a lighter version of the one you carried," she said. They shared a quiet moment before heading to the main hangar, where a crowd had gathered. Officials, trainees, community members, and press. A massive plaque waited beneath a red cloth. Together, Eleanor and Jack stepped forward and pulled the ribbon. Brooks Aviation Training Center, Nairobi, where kindness creates opportunity. The crowd applauded. Jack felt something in his chest. Not pride exactly, but something deeper. Purpose. Later, as the celebration faded and Eleanor prepared to leave, she paused beside her car. "The next facility," she said. "São Paulo. It's yours if you want it." Jack looked back at the hangar, the technicians laughing in their new uniforms, and nodded slowly. "I want it." She smiled, climbed into the car, then rolled down the window. "Jack," she said, voice soft but firm. "Thank you again for carrying my bags." As the car pulled away, Jack turned back to the future he'd built, one small act of kindness at a time. If this story touched you, we'd love to hear from you. What part of Jack's journey resonated most with you? Was it the moment he gave up his flight, the surprise on the private jet, or the life-changing decision he made in that New York skyscraper? Stories like this remind us that kindness isn't just a small gesture. It can be the spark that changes everything. Let us know in the comments. What would you have done if you were in Jack's shoes? And while you're there, tell us where you're watching from. It's always incredible to see how far these stories travel. Just like Jack. We read every comment, and your thoughts mean more than you know. Whether it's one word or one paragraph, your feedback helps keep this community of storytelling and hope alive. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and click the notification bell, because tomorrow we're bringing you another powerful, true inspired story you won't want to miss. One choice, one moment, one life changed forever. Drop a comment, say hello, be part of the story.